Hello and welcome back. When we last left our friends, Robin and John Go in the Wind, they had just gotten into the town by way of the shoemaker's house. Here we are, in the Wall by Marguerite D'Angeli, the last chapter. They did not linger in the house, but with a few words to the shoemaker, left by way of the garden. There was a door in the wall leading into the graveyard of the church, where John and Robin slipped quietly from one great tombstone to another. They entered the church by the sanctuary door, startling the sacristan, who slept and ate in a small room off the entrance porch. "Who art thou?" he called, hearing the creak of the door. "Art friend or foe?" "Psst!" warned John, stepping quickly toward the light of the lantern held by the sacristan. "We are friends. I am John Go in the Wind, minstrel. This lad is young Master Robin, friend and ward of Sir Peter. He hath this day saved us all." The sacristan held up the lantern where he could see John's face. "Now I mind thee," he said, nodding his head. "I knew thy father." John told the sacristan how Robin had come to warn him and to get help, and described the plan he had made with Sir Hugh to sound the bells, giving the signal for attack. "Come with me, then," said the sacristan, leading the way. They went down the long, dark aisle of the church to the door of the tower. "Give me thy crutches here, young master," said John. "Canst thou climb the ladder, or wilt go piggyback? 'Tis a great height, but there are resting places." "I can do it," said Robin shortly. Had he not climbed to the towers and turrets of the castle many times? They had just reached the belfry when it was time for curfew to ring. The bells began an ear-splitting clamor. "Down flat and cover thy ears, quick!" shouted John. They flattened themselves on the platform and endured the deafening sound. "We shall go to the top first," said John, "for it is yet too soon to give the signal, and from there we shall see somewhat." From the belfry to the top of the tower it was another 30 feet of climbing. When they reached the top, Robin fell in a heap onto the platform, with every bit of strength gone from his arms and legs. It slowly returned. In a little while he was able to rise and stand beside John, looking out over the town. "We agreed that I should wait an hour after curfew, when the moon will be nearly overhead," said John. "That allows time for all companies to be in place, and, with the sounding of the bell, to move in about the town and castle walls at once." "How can you tell when it's been an hour?" asked Robin. "By the feel of it," said John. "Besides, I shall play 'Love a Garland Is' and 'Lament of a Lass.' That will be half an hour." He unslung the harp from Robin's back and began the music. While they waited for the rest of the hour to pass, John pointed out the familiar turrets of the castle, the north tower where they had stood that day, and the tower of the keep, where the household waited for deliverance. He strummed on the harp between times. They tried to see into the hills about the town, but saw only the quiet countryside bathed in moonlight. In the town, supper fires sent up blue smoke, and here and there was the red glare of torchlight and campfire. Glints of moonlight on helmet or shield shone from the walls where sentries walked, but very little sound could be heard at that height. The hour was up. "Now," said John, "it is time for the alarm. Stay thou here, and I shall return. Cover thy ears well, but watch to see what happens." He was gone through the hatch into the darkness below. Robin waited, his skin prickling with excitement. Would the signal be at the right time? Would the arrows find their mark and lift the siege? Bong, 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 bong. The great bell rang, sending waves of sound that went out over the hills and came echoing back into the stone of the bell tower, which trembled with the vibration. At first, Robin could see nothing different from what he had seen before. Then, it was as if a part of the landscape itself moved off there toward the south, just below the edge of the town. Gathering from the slopes were tiny moving figures, now in the open, now lost in shadow. Robin searched for another sign, this time in the direction of Letham Bridge. The sign was there where he could see more clearly. John came up, breathing hard. "What's to be seen?" he asked. "Are they moving? Hast seen any arrows fly?" He looked to the Letham Bridge. Then it came. A hail of arrows that were like dark rain sped from oncoming yeomen, dropping the sentries on the bridge and picking off men of the guard manning the wall of the town. From where they stood, Robin could see it all as plainly as if it had been a toy village set in a toy landscape, and the soldiers, toy soldiers. He saw pikemen strike down sentries of the enemy at the town gate and take prisoner the Welsh guards. He saw the company of Sir Hugh's men enter and take the town. It had been a complete surprise. When John Go-in-the-Wind saw what was happening and realized that the plan had been successful, he tossed his hat in the air and clasped Robin in his arms. "We've won!" he shouted. "The Welsh are routed. Lindsay is saved once more." Then, setting Robin on his feet again, he said, "Stay thou here and watch how the Welsh are marched out of town whilst I go below. Thou'lt hear such a peal of bells as shall nigh wake the dead lying below." Down he went again through the hatch to the belfry. With the pealing of the bells, flares went up from castle and town. Windows and doors opened. The peal of bells stopped. John came back, and together they watched the lifting of the siege. They could see people running about through the streets, embracing one another, tossing caps and hats into the air, and in other ways showing their joy at being freed of the Welsh invaders. In a short while, they saw the enemies marched out of town. Tears streamed down Robin's cheeks. "I must not cry," he thought, wiping them away, "not even for joy." "Now," said John, lifting Robin aloft, "thou'lt be carried on my shoulder so, for thou'rt the hero of this victory." And together they went down the long stretches of ladder and stair to the ground. "Make haste," said Robin. "Let us go to the keep at once, so Sir Peter and Lady Constance shall know that I am safe and well. Brother Luke will be sure of it, for his prayers have followed me this day. That I know." All the way through the town square, John made his way with Robin on his shoulder, high above the villagers dancing in the dawn of returning day. They were greeted with cheers at the castle gate and followed across the courtyard to the inner gate and to the keep by the cheering crowd. Allen at gate saw them from the gatehouse. The drawbridge was lowered and the portcullis raised, and just inside the whole company of the household stood to receive them. Sir Peter was in the center with his sons and the 2 pages. Near him was Lady Constance with her women and little Alison. Dath whimpered joyfully beside Brother Luke. Sir Peter held out his arms and helped Robin to the ground, placing the crutches to support him. Then Placing his hand upon Robin's head, he spoke solemnly. Now, before God and this company, he said, I do hail thee, conqueror and true son of thy noble father. Lady Constance embraced Robin, and the women made much of him. Daff was too well-bred a dog to push himself forward, but his eager prancing and wriggling finally brought him to Robin's side, where he thrust his long, cold nose into Robin's hands. John Go-in-the-Wind was called forward. He was given a holding of land for his own and a portion of sheep. With it went certain rights for hunting and fishing, to be his and his heirs forever. Brother Luke gave Robin his blessing and went with him to his chamber. It seems long since I left here, said Robin, looking around as if he expected things to be changed. But there was the cross over his bed, and there on the workbench the little harp, just as he had left it, waiting for the strings to be fastened to the keys. Much hath happened in this one day, said Brother Luke. I should like to hear how thy journey went. By thy look thou hast fared well, except for needing a good wash and a sleep. Off with thy borrowed clothes, and once more I shall care for thee. Sleep overtook Robin even before Brother Luke had finished. The days grew short and very cold. Everyone went about with a red nose and a cloud of frozen breath. Robin was glad of the woolen gloves made for him by Lady Constance. They were snug and warm and decorated with needlework on the back. The river ran more slowly now, and ice began to form along the edges. Robin stopped swimming and took his exercise in other ways. He spent a great deal of time with Adam Bowyer shooting at a mark, and was already at work again in the carpentry shop, making a viol such as Piers Nightingale used. The harp was finished. Robin had learned how to tune it by tightening the strings, and could play it a little. Brother Luke was teaching him to sing a carol, because it was near to the feast of Christmas. There would be singing and caroling in the hall, and Robin remembered his father's letter, and hoped that Christmas would bring his father and mother to the castle. One day, before the feast of Thomas the Apostle, and after the feast of St. Lucy, the 13th of December, Robin was with Sir Peter in the armory. The coats of mail, the helmets, the lances, pikes, bows, and arrows were being put in order, and the great two-handed sword hung on the wall. See you here, said Sir Peter. This is where the blow struck my helmet. There is a dent as large as a basin. He rubbed his head where the helmet had been thrust in. Robin ran his fingers around the ugly cavity, imagining how it would feel to be struck with a mace. He was thinking of his father and wondering whether he too had been wounded. Will the Scottish wars have ended, think you? He asked. I have had no word directly, answered Sir Peter. There have been rumors about that troops of returning soldiers have been seen. Some were going southward along the high road. John Go-in-the-Wind might tell us if he were here, but he's not been nigh the castle for weeks. I dare say he's busy building shelter for his new flocks, and gathering wood for the winter, that his old mother may be warm. Robin said no more, but after that he went often to the top of the keep to scan the countryside for signs of horsemen. Sometimes he could see nothing for fog or rain. Sometimes the air was crisp and clear, and he could see far beyond the hills. Once, a cloud of dust moving on the road toward the town kept him excited for an hour, but it proved to be only a flock of sheep being driven to market. Once, a company of lancers appeared, but they turned southward. On the afternoon of the eve of Christmas, Robin was at his post on top of the keep, with Adam Bowyer, who was on watch. It began to snow. Robin watched while the silent whiteness covered the hills and the roofs of the town. Far, far below, he could see a hawking party. He could see the pages coming from the forest, dragging the Yule log and branches of holly to decorate the hall. Suddenly, Adam Bowyer cried, "Look! Look yonder!" He pointed east, where the road led into the high road and to the town gate. Robin left the north side of the tower and joined Adam, looking toward where he pointed. The snow dimmed what he saw, but it was clear enough. A company of knights and men-at-arms rode toward the castle. At the head rode the king, for only he wore the royal colors and the royal quarterings of the banners. At his side rode one who sat his horse only as Robin's father did. In the midst of the great company were ladies, pikemen, men-at-arms, and yeomen. That must be the queen. Was it the Lady Maud there beside her in the center? It must be. Robin burst into a cheer. "It is true," he shouted. "It is true. The Scottish wars are over, and my father is alive." He must say nothing about his mother for fear Adam would think him babyish. He dashed down the winding stair as fast as he dared, crossed the inner ward to the hall, thump, slip, and then to the solar to find Sir Peter. Thump, slip, thump, slip, thump, slip, thump, slip. Sir Peter roared with laughter at Robin's attempt to tell him about the approaching company, for he knew from the moment he had seen Robin's shining face the good news. "Shall I go to the gate to be there when they enter, think you?" asked Robin anxiously. "Do what seems best, my boy," said Sir Peter. "Go stand beside Alan at gate, or stay you here by my side. I know what a fever of excitement is in thy bones, but do what you most want to do." Robin felt as if he must run to meet the company, must see his father, and feel the comfort of his mother's arms about him, yet he felt timid about facing either of them. They would find him so changed. "If I stand beside you, my lord, they will surely know it is I. If they see me in the courtyard, they may think I am but one of the stable boys. I shall stay here." "Come, lad," said Sir Peter, "let us go to the window of the tower. There we can see the company cross the drawbridge, and before they have dismounted, we can be back ready to welcome them in the hall at the head of the stair." Before leaving the hall, Sir Peter called Dennis the page and sent word to Lady Constance to be ready to greet the noble visitors. He and Robin quickly went up the winding stair to the turret overlooking the drawbridge. They reached it in time to hear the pounding of the hooves on the timbers of the bridge and to see the waving banners. The handsome, erect figure of Sir John de Burford was fitting company for the noble-looking king. And there, now, just passing into the courtyard, was Robin's lovely mother, the veil of her coif floating and mingling with that of the queen whom she attended. There was no time for greeting or waving. The tumult of horse and weapon made too much noise for voices to have been heard. Sir Peter grasped Robin and swung him across his back. They went swiftly back the way they had come and were standing in welcome at the head of the great staircase as the company entered. Who spoke first, or what was first said, it would be hard to tell. Robin found himself bowing to kiss his mother's hand, and then felt her soft arms about him. "Robin, my Robin," she whispered, and for a moment said no more, but only held him close, as if she could not let him go. The crutches fell to the stone floor with a great clatter. Robin's father bent to pick them up, laughing to keep from showing how deeply he was moved by the sight of them. "He is my son, too," he said, gently tugging at the mother's close enfolding arms, and holding Robin at arm's length to look into his face. "You are grown," he said. "Your eyes no longer outrace your chin, as do a child's. You've now the look of a youth." Sir John embraced his son warmly. Nothing was said of crutches or misshapen legs, or of ill fortune or of good. Sir Peter spoke. "Shall we not allow our guests to retire?" "Yes," agreed the king. "Later we shall hear news of the war's ending, and how all have fared this long year. Let us go our several ways and meet again in the hall, for we are spent with weariness and soiled with travel." With another touch of his mother's hand, Robin left the company and went to find Brother Luke, and to make himself ready for the audience. There never was such merrymaking as took place in the hall that Christmas Eve. Such ballads sung, such tales told. Branches of holly and spruce decked the hall and filled the air with fragrance. The Yule log burned on the hearth, and flaming torches filled the sconces. The king and queen sat enthroned in the great chairs on the dais. A tapestry was draped on the screen behind them, and rich Eastern carpets beneath. Sir Peter and Lady Constance sat at one side of the king and queen, and Sir John and Lady Maud at the other. Robin entered the hall with Brother Luke, as he'd been commanded, and at a signal came forward to stand before the dais. He wore a black velvet doublet, and carried the Saxon harp on his back. As usual, Death followed at his heels. Robin felt as though the hall were as long as London Bridge, for when he entered, all was quiet, and his crutches seemed to make a great sound on the stone floor. Servants and courtiers bowed as he passed. What was going to happen? What had the king to say to him? Would his parents leave him and go back to London? At last he reached the dais. The king rose and stood over Robin, lifting from his own shoulders a chain of gold set with medallions of fine workmanship. Then he spoke. "Can you kneel, my son?" he asked. "I can for a little time, sire," answered Robin, "long enough to say our Father." He dropped to the cushion, supporting himself with one crutch. The friar took the other. "Robin, son of John de Burford," the king said solemnly, "it hath been told to us what service you have done for the lord of this castle and me, king of the whole realm of England and France. You are a true son of a noble father. Though but a youth, you have shown courage a man might be proud to call his own." The king spread out the jeweled collar and dropped it onto Robin's shoulders, saying, "This shall be a token of our high regard, and with it go our grateful thanks." "Rise, young Robin," he commanded, and himself raised Robin to his feet. Robin was filled with gratitude to the king, because now his father could be proud of him. He could not speak for a moment, and indeed knew of nothing to say. but cheers and hand-clapping began to make such a noise and clatter that no speech could have been heard. When the noise had quieted a little, Robin was quieter too. He remembered the carol he had been learning for this very night, and words came to him. "Sire," Robin began, "I do thank you for this great honor, and I beg you to accept my song of Christmas." He brought forward the little harp he had grown to love, and sang this carol. "Come to Bethlehem and see him whose birth the angels sing. Come, adore on bended knee Christ the Lord, the new-born King. Gloria in excelsis Deo, Gloria in excelsis Deo." When the song was ended, once more the hall rang with shouts and cheers. "Sir Robin! Sir Robin!" Robin found himself standing between his mother and his father. Sir Robin? Was it he? "Sir," he addressed his father, "mind you not that I must go thus bent over and with these crutches to help me walk?" For he must know the worst at once. Gravely, Sir John answered, "The courage you have shown, the craftsmanship proven by the harp, and the spirit in your singing all make so bright a light that I cannot see whether or no your legs are misshapen." "As for me," said Lady Maud, slipping her arm about Robin, "what a comfort it will be to know that wars will never claim you, and you can come home, for there is now no need for you to stay here at Lindsay, nor is there further need for me to be with the Queen. She is now in good health. When the feast of Christmas is over, we shall all go home to London. Brother Luke shall come with us to be your tutor, if he will." When the midnight office was said in the church, the whole household trooped back to the hall, where tables were spread for the feast. Platters were heaped with food and carried in by pages and esquires. A giant boar's head came first in order, then pasties and whole suckling pigs, pigeons, and geese roasted with feathers on. The meats were followed by flaming puddings and bowls of wassail, chestnuts, and apples. Daff and the other hounds feasted too, for all the scraps were thrown into the rushes on the floor. It was nearly dawn when Robin felt himself lifted onto Brother Luke's back, for he had fallen asleep. "Where am I?" he asked in bewilderment. "What has happened?" "Thou'rt here, Sir Robin," said the friar, "safe with all thy loved ones. 'Tis the feast of Christmas, and thou hast found the door in thy wall." The